and contribute. Very happy to see that dVET is also devoting more time to the issue of informality, transitions to formality and apprenticeships in the informal economy. So indeed, apprenticeships in the informal economy have been one of the very first topics I was asked to work on when I joined the ILO 19 years ago. So very happy to continue working on this and to be able to share some progress, because while the issue, has been around for quite some time, I would say that in the last 20 years, we have indeed seen some more research. We have seen a lot of countries and partners experimenting with improvements in the system. So as Christine mentioned, I'll be talking more conceptually this time and leaving the more practical discussion for the breakout groups and also my co-presenter. So I'll just show you a little bit, sort of give you the genesis of some of the work we have done, show you some graphs, talk about our standards, the ones you hopefully already know, on transitions to formality and on quality apprenticeships, and then bring in some considerations for analysis and practice and show you some more graphs. So the ILO hasn't started 19 years ago to think about apprenticeships. We have engaged earlier. I found a paper from Fred Flutman from 92, but probably even earlier. There was work done. AfriStad had great studies and surveys. We had a first technical workshop, so that was the first I attended in 2007. Then we partnered with INAP, the Network on Innovative Apprenticeships, that probably many of you also know, in South Africa, and had a regional workshop in Africa. And then in 2023 with other partners, including with SDC as well, in NORAC, in the World Bank. And this year, SASASNet, which is a new network of skills actors in Africa, who really took on this topic of improving apprenticeships for transitions to formality, better employability of young people in Africa, has held a regional conference and published a Mombasa declaration that I really highly recommend you all to take a look at. I think it's very rich in content and policy messages to actually get countries to invest more in apprenticeships in the informal economy, build these bridges to formal systems that Christina was alluding to. Now, while this is already a very old graph, and maybe some of you have shown it because I tend to show it in most of my presentations, it's a rare case where we have comparable data from these AfriStad 1, 2, 3 surveys, where people respond whether they are learning through apprenticeship or through on-the-job learning, because a lot of people would still equate that. And there is a difference as well in how people see their status. I think that's very important to understand. Also, the World Bank and the Agence Française de Développement, they published a big study on skills in Africa already now 10 years ago. And they published this labor force survey-based data, whether people say they have ever been an apprentice or have ever attended a dVET institute. And you have quite a number of countries where apprenticeships still outnumber formal dVET quite notably, although not in all countries. So you have some countries where the phenomenon is much more prevalent, and this is what we're seeing as well in this graph. So that's the latest statistical brief the ILO published on apprentices in countries with large informal economies. And here we've compared the share of apprentices among the whole population among young people, so 15 to 34-year-olds, and compared with some of the European countries that have apprenticeship systems. And it's interesting to see. So, I mean, Sierra Leone is a bit of a special case. But then you already have Nigeria following right after Switzerland, Austria, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, France, Great Britain, Congo, Comoros, Mali, Guinea, the other Congo, Mauritania, etc., where you find considerable numbers of apprentices among the population. We can't say labor force because according to ILO statistics, unpaid apprentices, again, difficult to say, in kind is actually means paid, but not everyone understands it, and not all the statistical systems are good enough. But I mean, these are details. But unpaid apprentices in the statistical standards are not considered employed, hence they're out of the labor force. So we're saying number of people by population. And here we've compared the informal employment indicator with apprentices, and basically can see that in most countries, most apprentices are actually in informal employment, with the exception of Zambia. So if we have someone here from Zambia, it would be interesting to hear your story. Now, the ILO standards, as you know, we have conventions that need to be ratified by countries, and we have recommendations that are soft law. So these are some excerpts from the Transition to Formality recommendation, 2015, where the creative and innovative potential of the informal economy is clearly recognized, and where we also have a direct mention of recognition of informal apprenticeship systems through employment policies and education and skills policies. So already our tripartite constituents at that discussion and standard setting discussions at the ILO always take 2 years. So it's really a very formal and detailed process where every comma is being negotiated. They put in informal apprenticeships because they thought this was important. And there's also a mention, which I also find relevant to highlight, that incentives just like skilling, education and training can be used as an incentive to promote formality. Now, the Quality Apprenticeships recommendation, which is the latest skills standard adopted in 2023, has one article that talks about transitions from the informal to the formal economy. And it mentions the known types of interventions. So we need to strengthen the capacity of micro and small enterprises, but also their associations. And we need to strengthen business development services, financial services, occupation standard and health, safety and health, training methods, the capacity of mastercrafts people, adopting recognition of prior learning or certification processes. I mean, the term certification is not mentioned here, but I would say this is really what is meant as well. And last but not least, adding off-the-job learning for apprentices to complement the on-the-job learning. So for some of the considerations for analysis and practice, I took a number of graphs from a working paper we've published in 2022, with one slide and one consideration of why we talk about systems and why this is important. What do we know about decent work deficits? I mean, just really giving a short highlight. A lot of it is relatively intuitive. And what we know and what we can say about effectiveness, because it's important when we want to improve to have, to have clear measurement in mind. What do we mean by an effective system? So apprenticeship is considered, apprenticeships in the informal economy are considered a system because they are more than just an arrangement and an agreement between a learner and a master craftsperson. This agreement is embedded in local rules and traditions, informal institutions, and practices that are shared within a community. They might be different from one trade to another, might be different from one locality to another, but there are local rules that govern and that also help enforce the system. And hence, anything we want to do to improve it, first we need to understand how it works and what the mechanisms are internally that motivate and that restrict people's choices. So on decent work, I've picked one slide where we compared studies. Now, this is not labor force survey data, but this comes from smaller samples, more qualitative studies, but still with, samples of over 100 interviewees. And you can see that the picture is quite mixed, that the payment of medical expenses is one indicator for, how social protection is working, social protection of apprentices is working. You can see that, while in Sudan and Malawi, the master craftsperson generally covers, in Tanzania, Tunisia, much less. It's more the burden, or in Tanzania particularly, more the burden of the parents to cover medical expenses. Now, dropout rates is one of the indicators we looked at for effectiveness, because a system works when people actually manage to go through, acquire all the skills that are planned for, and then become employable at the end, either within the same business or elsewhere. And we also tried to compare with some countries. So while Egypt and Malawi probably are cases where we have quite high dropout rates, in other countries, we're really much closer to European countries as well. And an estimate from West Africa is from an earlier study is even lower for dropouts, which might indicate that actually these informal institutions and mechanisms are working. Transition to employment, another very important criterion for effectiveness. We can see that the majority of apprentices would either set up their own business or move on to be employed in another business. Some, like in Malawi, also continued formal training, or some even found a job in a larger enterprise. And just a very small group of people in one of the countries was reported as unemployed. So why do they work? I mean, a lot of the arguments for apprenticeship in the informal economy are just the same as for apprenticeships in the formal economy. The employer recoups the training investment when the apprentice becomes more productive, and the payment, the compensation is generally lower than for a skilled worker. So, he or she recoups the investment. Best candidates can be selected for apprentices. It's interesting because they earn while they learn, and the skills are relevant, and so the work is motivating. They can see what they do. Yet, why should they be improved? Well, first of all, apprentices are there in great numbers in many countries, and they could become a much more attractive option, whereby the government needs to only make some adjustments and improvements. Enterprises already invest. So overall, it might be the better way forward to strengthen skill systems than investing in heavy and expensive center-based training. Now, there are shortcomings, as we all know. I mean, there are decent work deficits, also beyond protection. But we find abusive practices. We find children that are too young as apprentices that should go to school and not be at the workplace. We have some mechanisms that artificially prolong apprenticeships and other shortcomings that can be addressed. Yet apprentices, and so this is the big message in the Mombasa Declaration as well, improved apprenticeships can contribute to transitions to formality for economies and for individuals, because with better skills and with skills that are recognized, people have better chances to find decent and formal jobs. So there's some further pointers for action that I leave for the working group, for the breakout session. But some of the key takeaways I'd like to share with you here is that apprenticeships should really be able to benefit from resources that formal systems already have in a number of ways, yet in a way that the functioning of it and these informal rules are kept intact and are only, amended or are built upon, so that you're not destroying a practice that is actually very useful for a country and for an economy. Yet, definitely, we've also learned that we need integrated policy solutions, linking skills with enterprise development policies and other policies. Local development policies, very important. So now Christina had asked me to take a look at the survey responses. I'm sorry, and I haven't referred to it so far, but I found them very interesting. So you've spoken about the need to work with locally trusted organizations. I mean, these are the business associations, but they might also be parents associations and workers organizations as well locally. So other means like skills checklists could be easy and more adapted tools for improving the training process within small businesses, and linking apprenticeship and upskilling as well of master craftspeople with business development support can provide exactly these incentives that link the better structuring of apprenticeships to transitions to formality and to productivity increases and enterprise growth as well. So here I pointed as well to apprenticeship contracts, and I think you've mentioned them as well in your responses, to have a more reliable agreement and be able to address some of the shortcomings, have some conflict resolution mechanisms locally available as well, to make these contracts more a bit more reliable and enforceable and address those shortcomings. Increasing participation of women and vulnerable groups, very important. Involving informal economy workers at all levels of a skills development system, locally, nationally, or sectorally, and looking at the skill needs in the informal economy, and not only on formalization. Data, I'm sure that's no surprise. We only found it for 14 countries in Africa. There are 54, so there's still some way ahead. And in everything we do, because it's a system that's there, it's a functioning system, we need to take a step-by-step approach. We can't, reform, revolutionize everything at once. I think we have seen that this is simply not working. Here are publications. I mean, you'll all receive the presentation. The policy brief is the latest, so that talks about recommendation 208 as an update of the old policy brief we had. It really summarizes the key messages from the ILO. Thank you very much. Looking forward to